Welcome, everyone. My name is Ruth McCullum, and I'm one of the trainers today for today's course on journal entries. I will be monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions, please type those in the chat and I will make sure we answer your question. If it's not something we can answer, we will add that to the parking lot for later follow-up. Additionally, we will have two other trainers joining, so you are in great hands today with the three of us. Each of us are available to help you with the hands-on activities in the last portion of class. Now, I'll ask the other trainers to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina Renner and I'll be your primary instructor today, sharing the PowerPoint presentation and showing you several demos in Workday. I'm the Director of Budget Planning in the College of Engineering. My backup instructor is Ruth, who already introduced herself and will step in as needed. Let's meet our other trainer.
Hello everyone, my name is Rachel Strock. My role today is I'm going to be taking attendance and making sure that the Buckeye Learn is updated with the completion of this course. My other responsibility today is I am in charge of our polling questions that we're going to have throughout the class. I'm going to take a moment now to launch our first two polls before we start the course material. I'm going to launch the first one now. Don't worry, it's just fun and to make sure that our polling is working. So of the following colors, which is your favorite? Purple, green, blue, or orange? All right, we're going to end the polling. And looking at the results, purple is our winner today, just by a little bit over blue. All right, so now that we know how to work on the polling, I'm going to launch our second polling question. So the responsibilities of a journal entry today. So which statement below best describes your responsibility for journal entries in our current accounting systems? Do you occasionally create journal entries? You frequently create journal entries? You approve entries? You create and approve entries? Or you do not currently create or approve any entries in today's systems? We're going to give couple more seconds here. And I'm going to end this poll. And it looks like we have a fair amount who currently do not create or approve entries. That's okay. We'll go over everything you need to know here in Workday. And if you have any questions, you can stay towards the end of class. I'm going to turn it back over to Ruth.
Thanks, Rachel. In this course, you will learn to create, approve, post, and find journal entries. You'll see different types of journal entries, learn their purposes, and when it's appropriate to use each type. Throughout the course, we will refer to job aids and reference materials that are available to you in the Administrative Resource Center, which we will call the ARC for short. The URL for the ARC is shown on the cover page of the activity guide, which you received with your invitation to this class. I hope you had a chance to review the recording on FDM and financial work tags, which is a recommended prerequisite to this course. If not, I encourage you to view that recording, which you can find in Buckeye Learn. Now I will turn this over to Christina and we will look at the full agenda.
Thank you. During the next 90 minutes, we'll cover several topics related to journal entries and then give you the opportunity for some hands-on practice. In the first 60 minutes, we will cover the topics listed here, and I'll show you several demos. We will cover manual journal entries, funds transfers, required approvals, EIB journals, find journals and journal lines, and accounting adjustments. At the end of the 60 minutes, we will have a quick review of the material covered and then give you the opportunity to practice whichever activities you'd like on your own. For those of you who either create or approve journals, we encourage you to stay. You can join for the full 30 minutes or just a portion of that time, depending on what you want to practice. We will open as many breakout rooms as we need. If you do not create or approve journals in your role, you may wish to drop from the class at that point. If you participate in the hands-on activities, you have an activity guide with instructions that was provided with your Zoom invitation. Let's get started. The bulk of our time today will be spent on manual journal entries. In this section, we'll learn how to create, approve, post, and reverse manual journal entries. Entries can be one-time or recurring. In a minute, I'll demonstrate a one-time entry. But first, let's talk about recurring entries. If there's a journal entry that will post with identical or nearly identical work tags on a regular frequency, you can create a recurring journal template in Workday to make this very simple. Each time you need that journal to post, you simply pull up the template, update it as necessary, and submit. There's a job aid in the Administrative Resource Center to instruct you on how to create a template if you need to. Now let me demonstrate a one-time journal entry. All right, so we will get started with Workday here. And I'll get my other template up and ready, and we will log into Workday. Oh, sorry everyone. Was not logged in still. So right now we're in the training database. And so since we're in the training database, it's given us this person, but we're going to sign in with someone who has different access. And when you're in regular Workday, you're just going to be you. So you will not have to proxy in as somebody else. But for right now, we're going to do this start proxy. So we'll just go into here and we're going to be Derek Kinslow. And Derek has university access. And so we go up to the search bar and we're going to start with our journal and we're going to type create journal. And so the scenario that we have is recently you purchased lab supplies that were 100% expensed to your cost center. Well, another cost center decided if they wanted to share the supplies and thus the expense. Now they've agreed and you'll split the cost across 2 cost centers. All right, so to create our journal, we just click on that link, create journal. This brings us into where we are going to create it. The first thing we need to do is select the ledger. So we'll look at our ledgers, and remember, since Derek has university access, he can only see the Ohio State University ledger. If he had OSU Health System or different access, he would see those in his drop-down box. So we're going to select actuals, not encumbrance or pre-encumbrance. You always select actuals. Then you can click on this date button to make the date. We'll pick December 15th. And for the journal source, we're going to be doing a cost center journal. And so you can see there are a lot of different choices, but we're selecting cost center journal. The balancing fund is FD115. The anchor clearing fund. And we're going to enter that same balancing fund every single time that we do a cost center journal. And we'll show you some funds transfers or central finance journals. You enter this FD115. This is a clearing fund for claim on cash entries, which are systematically created anytime you cross balancing work tags or companies. Next is the book code. And the purpose of the book code is to allow us to produce different kinds of reports, managerial reports, financial reports, after the period is closed. We're going to leave this blank because the blank book code default value is what allows us to produce managerial reports. Since there's not a blank book code option, we just leave it blank. We just leave that part blank. The memo is our business purpose. That is telling us why are we doing this journal. And so for this one, we're going to put in splitting expenses between 2 cost centers. And of course, if you're doing your journal, hopefully a little bit more descriptive than this, but this is good for the training. Then you hit continue. We're just going to leave all those as is. So hit continue. This now brings up the lines in our journal. Sorry, Workday's a little slow, the training database. Here we go. So we've got our lines of our journal. And so the company defaulted in because we used the ledger Ohio State University actual. So you see the company defaulted in, Ohio State University. For our ledger account, we are going to use supplies, 62000. And we are going to debit $7,000. Our budget date's already there. And the cost center that we're using is CC 12311. If you knew the name, you could just type in the name as well. The balancing unit defaulted because of the cost center. The fund that we're going to use is the general fund, FD 100. We're not having any gifts, grants, or programs. But if you remember from your FDM course that we do need a ledger account and a spend or revenue category. So the spend category that we're using is lab and scientific supplies. Also note that this function code is here, and this is defaulting in based on usually your cost center. So you don't need to X this out, don't change it, just leave it as it is. It will default in. Now it's time for line 2 of our journal. So we'll come in here, we're going to use that same ledger account of supplies. This time we're going to be crediting $7,000. And the cost center on this side is Arts and Sciences Microbiology Administration. Again, notice that balancing unit is defaulting. This line, we're also still going to use the FD 100, no gifts, grants, or programs. The function defaulted in, so we don't touch that, we just leave it alone. And again, we need a spend or revenue category, and we are going to be using the same one as earlier, the lab and scientific supplies. So we think we've got everything correct in our journal, but we do need to add an attachment. So if you click on the attachments, this is where you would add, why are you doing this journal? Maybe it's an email from someone, maybe you have someplace where you had an incorrect work tag and that's why you're doing the journal, but you need some sort of documentation. So we're going to attach our documentation. And then we are going to hit submit. We think we've got it ready. So we're going to hit submit. We'll see where it goes next in the process. So if you click on the little blue arrow, it's going to provide more details. So you can see the details of the journal. Derek submitted it. Here's all of the information we just entered. Here are the lines that we just completed. And you can see that this journal is still in progress. It has not posted. But if you click on process, you can see where it is in the process. Here's Derek, counting journal, and it still needs to be approved by 2 different cost center managers, James Combs and Heather Cantu, in order for it to post. Okay, come back into our presentation. The demonstration that I just finished was a cost center journal. But let's say you work in a central finance area. You would choose different values for the fields in the header. For example, it's important to choose the ledger that matches your company and important to choose the central finance journal source. It's the company, journal source, and dollar amount that determines how a journal will workflow it for approval. Are there any questions before I move on? Any questions? I'm going to show you the approval of the entry I just created. After an entry is initiated, it will workflow for approval as configured in Workday and is easily found in the approver's inbox. So let's go back into Workday. All right, so we're going to proxy in to the 2 names that we saw earlier that need to approve this journal. So we're going to come back here and we're going to start proxy again. But this time we're going to be Heather Cantu. So now we're logged in as Heather Cantu. And you can see here's the inbox for her. She also has the inbox up here of all the things that she needs to do. So you can click in either place. So here's the journal that I just completed as Derek Kinslow. So let's click on that. So she would see this in her inbox and she would look at it and say, you know, is this the right ledger account? Is this the right amount? Does it have the correct work tags? Is it the right spend category? So she would check all of this before she would approve it. And then she would also look at the attachment. Does this make sense? So Heather can either approve the journal, she can send it back if she found an error on it and maybe a work tag needed changed, or the amount needed changed, or something was wrong with it. She could send that back to Derek so that he could create it. She could add an approver or click on the three dots. She could deny it if it was completely wrong and this journal should have never been done in the first place, or cancel and come back at a later time to approve it. But since it looks correct, she's going to approve it now. So again, click on the blue little arrow, see where is it in process. Still in progress. We can see that the journal, Derek submitted it, Heather approved it, but still needs to be approved by one of these individuals as a cost center manager in order for it to post. So let's go back to and be James Combs and see if it posts then. All right, so let's go back up to the top and start our proxy and be James Combs. Okay, so now we're James. He could check his inbox here, click up here, and see all the journals and processes that he needs to approve. So here's the one that was initiated by Derek, approved by Heather, and now is on James's list to approve. So again, he would check, does the ledger account, are the amounts correct? Does the business purpose make sense? Were all the work tags correct? And he would look at the attachment, does this make sense for this journal? So he thinks it does. So again, he can approve, send it back if he found a mistake, add an approver, deny, or cancel. But it looks correct, so he's going to approve it. So now our process has been successfully completed. So you can see that our journal is now posted. And there's our journal number, the JE number. So you could put this again in the search bar if you were looking for this specific journal. So we have a posted journal now. Come back into our presentation. Okay. As you may recall from the FDM class, ledger account is a required work tag and is generally derived from the spend category and revenue category work tags. Creating a manual journal entry is the one time that ledger account is not derived by the system. That may be a future enhancement in Workday, but for now, because it's not automatically populated for us, we need to know how to look up the correct ledger account. In my first demo, I entered a ledger account that I already knew, and in time, you'll learn the ledger accounts that you will typically use. We suggest that you write them down as you learn them. That way you don't have to look them up every single time. Until you learn them though, you will need to look them up. I'm going to demonstrate that for you now. I'll show you how to find the correct ledger account that's related to a specific spend category or revenue category and a specific company. All right, so we are going to go back in and proxy in as Derek again. And so the report that we're going to run is called Ledger Account Usage Rules Report. And we are going to have it pull back as much information as possible. So we're going to leave this untouched. But once we go into Workday, you could X out the areas that you are not in so that it only pulls back the information for the company that you work in. But for right now, we're going to pull back as much information as possible. So select OK. Okay, and so you'll see that this is a lot of fields. And This is really the one time where it is helpful to move our data into Excel, but that shouldn't be necessary for most things. You'll find that most all of your work can be completed completely inside of Workday. That's one of the main reasons Ohio State chose Workday to be the single source of financial record truth. Its ease of use and the ability for us to perform all the steps of end-to-end business processing inside a single system. So we are going to export this to Excel. And we're going to use this little button here, export to Excel. We'll hit download. And then we'll open it up. Okay. So you can see all the different columns here. Excuse me. We're just going to make these columns and rows the right height and width. And so we recommend using the filter button. And let's say we know that we want to use spend category SC 10505. All the spend and revenue categories are in column F. SC 10505. Here's all the spend and revenue categories. And you'll notice in column E that this is all the different companies. So it depends on which company that you want to use that you'll use the right spend revenue and the right ledger accounts. So we're on the university side, so we are going to pick the university one. So we'll just get rid of all the other ones that aren't university. Excuse me. And now we have our ledger account, 63430. So this is the column that we would use on the second spot in our journal when we're looking for ledger accounts. We'd use this ledger account with this spend category when we'd be creating our journal. Okay. Let's take a moment for a couple of polling questions about a few key points that we've covered so far.
All right, thank you, Christina. I'm going to launch our third poll here. So how does Workday determine how to route a journal for approval? Is it based on the journal source, based on the dollar amount, based on the company, or based on a combination of all of the above? And we're gonna go ahead and end the polling. It looks like most of you have this. The correct answer is it is based on a combination of all of the journal sources, dollar amounts, and companies. So my next polling question is having to do with what we just talked about in finding ledger accounts. So what are the variables that Workday evaluates to determine the appropriate ledger account on a transaction? Is it the company and the journal source? Is it the company and the cost center? Or is it the company and the spend or revenue category? So which would be the variables that Workday evaluates to determine the appropriate ledger account on a transaction? I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. And the correct answer is the last one. The variables that Workday uses to evaluate the appropriate ledger account, as Christina just showed us, is the company and the spend or revenue category.
Great. Now let's talk about reversals. Just as we can do today, if a posted entry is incorrect, it can be reversed as long as the accounting period is still open. You can reverse the entry and then create the correct entry in the same period. One thing I really like about Workday is how immediately we can see transactions after they're approved. They post immediately and update our reports. You may have heard the term living in live data to refer to this real-time posting. We can see the impact of our work in real time. This helps us spot an error sooner and have the opportunity to reverse and correct it before we're in period close. If I want to reverse an entry, the first thing I need to do is find it in Workday. And there are a couple ways to do that. I can use the report called Find Journals-OSU, which I'll find and show you shortly in a demo. Or if I know the journal number, I can search for that number. If you discover an error after the period's close, we cannot reverse it. The reason is because the closed books are the official and final financial record of that accounting period. We can correct our books year to date, though, if we need to after the period's closed. We would create two transactions, one to negate the original incorrect entry and a second entry that is the correct entry, both dated in the current period. Workday also allows us to set entries to auto-reverse. For example, in the case of an accrual, when the actual expense posts, the accrual for that expense will auto-reverse. Are there any questions about reversals, the different types, or when they're appropriate? No questions? Okay, excuse me, let's talk about fund transfer journals. This section teaches when and how to create fund transfer journals. We cover funds transfers in this course as they are a type of journal entry. You'll see in my demonstration that I will select a different journal source called funds transfer. In Workday, when we say funds transfer, it may be different than what you're thinking of today. We are transferring funding between different funding sources, not necessarily transferring from one fund value to another fund value. Let me say that again because it's different than today. In Workday, a funds transfer moves funding between different funding sources, not necessarily between fund values. The funds transfer job aid in the ARC lists all the specific pairs of ledger accounts and revenue spend categories that can be used for funds transfers. Let me demonstrate a funds transfer. Okay. So for funds transfers, just like for our cost center journal, we still go up to create journal. Select create journal. And for our funds transfer, the scenario is you have a new faculty member joining evolution, ecology, and organismal biology. Your college administration has funds to transfer to your cost center to cover the salary cost. So again, we're going to look at our ledger. We're going to pick actuals, not encumbrance or pre-encumbrance. We're going to select the accounting date. And for this time, for the journal source, last time we picked cost center journal, but this time we're going to pick funds transfer journal. The balancing fund, just like last time, is FD115. Remember, you'll use that for funds transfers, cost centers, and central finance journals. Book code, remember, we're leaving that blank. The memo is our business purpose. So we'll type in funding, salary costs for a new faculty. And everything else we're leaving as is. Hit continue. So this time for our ledger account, we're going to be using GFA net revisions, which is 49900. We're going to be debiting $86,000. The cost center is the college administration. You notice that also in our cost center journals and finance and our funds transfers that there's no positives and negatives like PeopleSoft. It's going to be the debits and credits. So you just enter in a positive number. In our cost center here, our balancing unit defaulted. We'll be using the general fund. No gifts, programs, or projects, but we do need a spend or revenue category. And we are using RC1648. To create the second line of our journal, we're also using that same ledger account, crediting 86,000. And this money is coming to the department. evolution, ecology, and organismal biology. The balancing unit defaulted. The fund, again, is FD 100. And the spend revenue category we're using is, again, RC 1648. Remember, we need to add an attachment. So we'll select our files and add our attachment. We think we've done everything correct. So we're going to hit submit. Click on the little blue arrow. You can still see that our funds transfer is in progress. And if you click on the process, you can see submitted by Derek Kinslow, but this time it needs to be approved by a cost center director. Last time with our cost center journal needed to be approved by a cost center manager, but these ones flow to a director. What questions do you have about funds transfer journals? Any questions? All right, Workday is configured to route transactions for approval, different than what we're used to today. So it's important that we cover this. There's a graphic in the Administrative Resource Center that shows the flow of approvals for journal entries, funds transfers, and accounting adjustments. You might want to take a look at this after class. Let's go over some key points about approvals. You saw in the demonstrations that I pointed out specific journal sources to choose in the journal source field. This is one of the main reasons it matters, because journal sources control approval workflow. In the Administrative Resource Center, there is the reference guide for journal sources where you can see all of them to learn more. Journals that cross companies require additional approval. Journals with work tags of OSP grants or medical center investments will route to those specific areas for approval. Central finance journals route for approval if total debits or total credits are over 100,000. Decentral and OSUP created journals route for approvals regardless of amount. Upon final approvals, journals post and update reports immediately. Again, I want to point out the benefit of living and live data. When a transaction's approved, it posts right away, and we can see its impact on our financial reports immediately. If you are an approver of entries, you will want to watch your Workday inbox for notifications that journals have routed to you for approval. It's only after your approval that transactions will post. Some of you have roles that allow you to create entries and approve entries created by others. You will not be able to approve your own entry in Workday as the system is configured to prevent you from doing so. This segregation of duties controlled by the system is just another benefit of Workday. Now let's talk about what approvers should review, what they can do, and when a journal routes to them for approval. What approvers can do. If everything on the transaction looks correct, the approver will approve the transaction and it will post. If something's not correct or incomplete, perhaps missing a work tag, the approver can send the transaction back to be updated. When a transaction is corrected and submitted again, it will workflow for approval a second time. The approver can also deny a transaction if it's not needed. When a transaction is denied, it cannot be edited later and resubmitted for approval. The transaction will need to be created from scratch if it's still needed. Therefore, approvers should not deny a transaction that needs to be corrected. They should instead send it back and add comments. We encourage approvers to check their inboxes regularly and review journals timely. What they cannot do. Segregation of duties does not allow an approver to edit someone else's transaction. Different than today, we cannot leave journals unposted when we close the period. The approver must either approve or deny each transaction that's requiring their approval before month-end close. What they're expected to review. Approvers should check for accuracy and send it back if something needs to be fixed. Because the user must select both the ledger account and the spend revenue category, you will want to check that they have selected the appropriate combination for each entry. This is important because the system will not detect incorrect relationships between ledger accounts and spend revenue categories on manual journal entries. Approvers should check for sufficient documentation to indicate the appropriateness of the journal. Does it make sense? Does the attached documentation support the transaction type? Are the work tags appropriate? If not, send back for clarification or deny. Approvers should understand their business needs and be able to tell if the initiator understands the business need for the transaction. The approver should look for coaching opportunities to help initiators learn more about the business and the purpose of different types of transactions. Are there any questions about approvals? Okay. All right. Enterprise Interface Builder Journals. You may have heard the term EIB before. It stands for Enterprise Interface Builder, and it simply means this. EIB is the way we upload data to Workday from a spreadsheet. It's the Workday term for a journal template upload. There are many types of data that we can load into Workday using an EIB template. For example, in addition to journal entries, we might load budget data or project data, and because the fields are so different in each case, we have several different EIB templates. When you want to build an EIB for journal entries, make sure you pull the correct template from the Administrative Resource Center. We do not recommend saving the template on your laptop because fields may change from time to time with Workday updates. There's a job aid that describes each field in the header and each field in the journal lines. You may not need data in each field, so it's important to pay attention to whether each field is described as required or optional at Ohio State, per the instructions in the job aid. The Workday provided templates have labeled each field as required or optional, but the way we use the fields at Ohio State in our required fields are different in many cases. This is why you should follow the job aid. I realize that many of you will not create EIB, so I'm not going to demonstrate it, but I want to show you what the template looks like and talk a little bit about it. So let me pull up the template and the job aid. Here is the job aid. You can see in the job aid, they do a great job explaining that there's, again, 2 tabs, and I'll show you that in just a second, but which fields are required and which ones are optional. And so it's really important to pay close attention to what the job aid is saying so that you don't enter in fields that you don't need to, and make sure you fill out the ones that are required. There's also instructions on, once you've gotten your template ready, on how to put this into Workday. So it's how to launch this integration, and has step-by-step what you need to click on and how to run that. Because just doing the template is just one step of it. Getting the template ready, getting it uploaded, and then doing your journal entry. But the template here in ARC really does a great job explaining it. So if you need to do it, just follow the job aid. I did want to show you what the Excel template looks like. And again, you'd follow that job aid to say, is this a required field or not? This is an example of our journal that we did first, where we were splitting the expenses. You can see it's a cost center journal. There's drop-down boxes here. The memo, just like we had typed in. There's 2 tabs. There's the lines, just like our other journals, with the company. And again, you're going to be using the numbers here. You're not going to be writing in the department name. You'll be using all the numbers. But if you follow along with the EIB job aid, you'll do fine. Okay. So when I've gotten all the fields filled in on our Excel sheet, I can either launch it right away, I can update and validate for errors first. It's easier to fix certain errors before you launch the integration. So that's why you would validate your data first. When you're ready to launch, you would follow the instructions in the job aid, and after the data is loaded in Workday, you would still need to submit the journal for approval and posting. That requires that you find your journal and submit it. In my next demo, I'll show you how to do that. But first, we have another set of polling questions.
All right. So the first one is going to be about funds transfers. So which of the following statements below is correct about funds transfer journals? Is it that fund transfer journals are not journal entries? Or fund transfer journals are journal entries with a unique journal source called funds transfer journal? Which is correct? I'm going to end the poll. And everyone got it correct. So the following statement that is correct is that fund transfer journals are journal entries with a unique journal source called a funds transfer journal. Our next polling question has to do with approvals. So approvers have the opportunity to approve, send back, or deny transactions. What are they reviewing and thinking about as they decide whether to approve a transaction? Are they looking at accuracy, sufficient documentation, business need, or all of the above? I'm going to end the poll. And everyone got this correct again. The answer is all of the above. Approvers should be looking for accuracy, sufficient documentation, and business need. We got one more poll really quickly having to do with EIB journals. So which of the following statements are correct about EIB journals? Is it the mechanism for uploading data into Workday via a spreadsheet? Or is it the acronym stands for Enterprise Interface Builder, and it could be multiple answers? Give a few more seconds here. And we're going to end the poll. And actually both statements are correct. An EIB is the mechanism for uploading data into Workday via a spreadsheet, and it does stand for Enterprise Interface Builder.
Great job, everyone. All right, let's talk about finding journals and journal lines. This section teaches us how to find journals that have already posted and find specific lines within and across transactions. There are a number of reasons you may wish to find a journal that has posted. Earlier, I mentioned a couple times when you would need to find a journal entry. If you wanted to reverse an entry, you need to find it first. And after you launch your EIB journal, you need to go into the system, find the journal, and then submit it. The report you use is called Find Journals-OSU. Let me show you how easy it is to find the journal entry that I created earlier using the report. You can also search for your journal with the journal number if you know that number. Let me show you this. So we're going to type it in up here. Find Journals-OSU. There it is. So you're going to try to fill in all of the information that you need to search for the journal. So we know that we did this in the Ohio State University. The year is FY21. The period is December. And we know that it is a posted journal. And it was originated by Derek Kinslow. And we'll hit OK and search for our journal. So here's the one that we did today, right here. And you could click on it and review it. You could also, if you knew the journal number, you could use that whole amount and type it in up here. Remember that you need those first couple letters of anything that you're searching in Workday. So you can type it right here. And if you get that, you can click all of Workday, and there's your journal entry. Also use the Find Journal Lines-OSU report. show you that one. Find journal lines -OSU. So again, we're going to click on our company. This one has some stage data, but I want to show you how this works. And we're going to do FY21. We're actually going to go back to August because that's when the stage data is there. And the ledger account we know is supplies. And we know that it is posted. And let's see, we also know that it has certain work tags that we need. CC12311. And we know that we use the general fund. And we know that we need a supplier invoice was our journal source. You see there's a lot of different journal sources. So we're looking for supplier invoice. So many. Then we'll hit OK. So we would use this one if we knew we had work tags or other features. Here we go. Let's hit OK. So this brought up 137 items. Anytime you're in Workday, you can click on any of these gray bars and look for a certain value, sort ascending or descending. And so this brought up all the supplier invoices for that period. And then you could click and find the one that you were looking for. So that's a little bit about journal lines and finding journals. All right. This section defines accounting adjustments, when they're needed, and how to create them. Although accounting adjustments are different than journal entries, we felt that it was appropriate to include them in this course rather than creating a separate course. Similar to journal entries, they route for approval based on configuration built into Workday. And accounting adjustments are used to correct operational journals, such as correcting work tags on a paid supplier invoice or expense report. So it's important to remember for accounting adjustments that you cannot change the dollar amount and you cannot change the number of lines in the journal. So let me go back into Workday. And again, we have a few staged invoices for this accounting adjustment. So I'm going to put that, our invoice number up here in the search bar. And if you get no results, remember, click on all of Workday. So here's our supplier invoice. So to see the three dot next to it, related actions, we're going to click on that, then accounting, and then adjust accounting. And so for our accounting adjustment, we realized that we forgot to add a program to this invoice. So we're going to add it here. So here's our supplier invoice. And right here, you can see the proposed accounting adjustment, work tags. Our cost center's right, balancing unit right, funds right, but we forgot to add a program. So we're going to go and add that program now. Back here. It's Chair Special Fund Program. We've added it. And then we need to fix the change reason. There's only one change reason available, but you still have to click it. Wrong work tag entered. And then hit submit. If you click on the blue arrow, you still see that it's in progress. In order to see who's up next, Derek submitted it, but it's still going to need to be approved by Heather Cantu before this accounting adjustment is posted. Okay. We have now covered all the course material, and before we begin some hands-on practice, I want to reinforce some key points with the group knowledge check. We have 5 questions in our group knowledge check, and as we go through each one, you can either use the chat to answer your questions or open your mic and respond. Everyone should respond. Here we go. We just finished learning about accounting adjustments, so we'll start with that topic and contrast it with journal entries. I'm going to read a couple of scenarios and ask which one's the better choice, journal entry or accounting adjustment. There's a paid expense report with an incorrect OSP grant. Which transaction type is best for correcting the expense report? Journal entry or accounting adjustment? You type in your answers into the chat or open up your mic. Great job, everyone. Accounting adjustment is the correct answer because the adjustment will be fully transparent on the original entry, showing that the original OSP grant has been changed. Scenario 2. There's a paid supplier invoice that was expensed against a single cost center, but it needs to be spread across 3 cost centers. Which transaction's better? Journal entry or accounting adjustment? Great job. Journal entry is the correct answer because one of the limitations of an accounting adjustment is that you cannot increase the total number of lines. Our second question is about the responsibilities of the journal entry initiator. When I bring up the answers, I want you to choose which one the initiator is responsible for. Go ahead and type your answers in the chat. A, choosing the correct journal source. B, using the memo field of the header to note the business purpose. C, ensuring accuracy of the journal. D, attaching supporting documentation. E, approving the entry so it can post. Be more than one. So A, choosing correct journal source. Yes, the initiator needs to choose the correct journal source because that controls the approval workflow. And with funds transfers, it controls which spend and revenue categories are transfer eligible. B, using the memo field on the header to note the business purpose. Yes, it's important to put a meaningful note in the memo field about the business purpose. You can optionally add a memo to the individual lines, but the business purpose belongs on the header. C, ensuring accuracy of the journal. The initiator is always responsible for the accuracy, and even though an approver is reviewing the journal, that does not shift the responsibility for accuracy away from the initiator. D, attaching supporting documentation. Yes, we covered this several times today. A question came up in a previous class about attachments that include confidential information. If that's the case, your note could say documentation's kept on file and where. E, approving the entry so it can post. As we saw in one of the demos today, the system does not allow an initiator to approve their own entry. Our third question is about the responsibility of the journal entry approver. When I bring up the answers, I want you to choose which one the approver is responsible for. Watching their Workday inbox for journals that need approval. B, reviewing the accuracy of the journal and sending it back if corrections necessary. C, editing the journal if it's something simple and we're already in period close. D, reviewing supporting documentation. E, approving the entry so it can post. Right, A. Yes, watching the Workday inbox regularly is important so transactions can post timely and update reports. B. Yes, the approver should check for accuracy and send journals back to the initiator if necessary. The initiator is responsible for the accuracy. C. No, the approver is prevented from editing journals that were initiated by someone else. D. Yes, it's important to confirm that there's attached documentation and that it's appropriate for the transaction. E, yes, the approver must approve the entry in order for it to post. Question 4 quizzes us about ledger account relationships. I'm going to bring up a few statements one at a time and ask you if the statement is true or false. Revenue categories and spend categories determine the appropriate ledger accounts. True or false? That one is true. Great job. The ledger accounts associated with specific revenue spend categories are the same for each company. False. Great job. C. On manual journal entries, the system does not default the ledger account for us. Instead, we need to determine what it is. True. The relationship of revenue spend categories to ledger accounts is many to one, not one to one. That one is true. This is the last of our knowledge check questions, and following that, we have one more polling question and some closing remarks before we begin the practice session. This question asks us about the purpose of funds transfers in Workday. I'm going to bring up two choices, and I want you to determine which one is correct. A, the purpose of the transaction is to move funds from one fund value to another fund value, or is it B, the purpose of the transaction is to transfer funding from one funding source to another? A or B? Great job. Everyone's getting that one right. It is B. The purpose of the transaction is to transfer funding from one funding source to another. Oh, I think Ruth, you're up.
All right, I was on mute. Well, apologies for that. As we close the presentation portion of the class, thank you for attending, and we encourage you to stay for practice, especially if you create journal entries in your role. We also encourage you to practice on your own in the lab tenant after class. The URL for the lab tenant is on the cover sheet of the activity guide. The lab tenant is similar to production, where you do not need to proxy in as somebody else. You will sign in as yourself and practice the Workday tasks that are associated with the security roles of which you are assigned. I also want to remind you the URL for the Administrative Resource Center is on the cover sheet of your activity guide as well. That is where you will find the Workday job aids and reference materials to help you learn your Workday tasks and become comfortable with the new ways of doing things. If you took this class as a prerequisite for other classes, you should register for your next classes in Buckeye Learn. Now, let's take our final poll.
All right, everyone. So now that you've completed this course on journal entries, how would you describe your comfort level with Workday? Do you overall, you feel more comfortable than the beginning of class, but realize there's a lot to learn? You feel less comfortable than the beginning of class, now that you see how much there is to learn? Do you believe that the only way you'll get comfortable is to start practicing in the lab environment? Or do you feel pretty good because this course reinforced what I need to be able to do in Workday? And I'm going to end this poll. Share the results really quick. And it's good to know that overall, most people feel more comfortable than the beginning of class, but realize there's a lot to learn. As we mentioned, you can practice in the lab tenant, OSU 10, and there's many job aids and reference materials that are available in the Administrative Resource Center.